2 summers ago, I marked off a 10 by 10 square in my backyard, sprayed it with a mix I made for under $1 from 3 things in my pantry, and walked away. 14 days later, that square was visibly thicker, darker, and standing up straighter than the rest of the lawn, which was on a full synthetic fertilizer program that cost me about $120 a season. This isn't folklore. The active ingredients in that kitchen mix are the same active ingredients the fertilizer industry sells you in a bag, marked up about 4,000%. They didn't hide it. They just made sure the bag was easier to find. I'll walk you through the exact mix, the exact timing, and at the end, the one ingredient I add only in fall that turns a green lawn into a thick one. Here's the thing. The lawn fertilizer industry as we know it didn't exist before World War II. It was built deliberately on purpose, out of the leftovers of the munitions program. The Haber-Bosch process was developed to pull nitrogen out of the air and turn it into ammonia for explosives. After 1945, those plants didn't shut down. They got rebranded. The same ammonia that filled artillery shells started filling fertilizer bags. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's industrial history. Read the Department of Agriculture's own post-war records, and it's right there. Now here's where it gets interesting. In 1947, Scott's launched Turf Builder. Within a decade, they had taught the American homeowner that lawn feeding was a 4-step bagged program. A product, a schedule, something you bought. And at the exact same time, USDA county extension bulletins from the 1930s and early 40s, bulletins that had been telling farmers and homeowners how to mix their own ammonia and Epsom salt lawn tonics for pennies, quietly stopped getting reprinted. The information didn't get debunked. It got shelved. Here's the math. The average American homeowner now spends $400 to $500 a year on a lawn fertilizer program. The same nitrogen and the same magnesium, delivered out of your pantry, runs about $25 a year. Over 25 years of owning a house, that's roughly $10,000 per lawn transferred to the industry for chemistry. You could have mixed in your garage in 5 minutes. I want to be straight with you. I'm not anti-fertilizer. I still use synthetics on certain lawns. I'll tell you when in a minute. What I'm against is pretending the bag on the shelf is fundamentally different from what came out of the same factory, with the same atoms, in the same century. The chemistry is the chemistry. They didn't suppress the science. They suppressed the recipe. All right, let's walk through it together. The mix is 3 things: household ammonia, Epsom salt, and plain blue dish soap. That's it. 3 items, all of which are probably within 30 feet of where you're standing right now. Start with household ammonia. Clear, unscented, the cheapest jug at the hardware store or the cleaning aisle. About 10% ammonia in water. Read the label. Not the lemon-scented kind. Not the sudsy kind. Not the one with the picture of a flower on it. Plain, clear ammonia. That jug runs about $4, and it's going to give you the better part of a season's worth of applications. Ammonia is your nitrogen source. When it hits soil, it hydrolyzes into ammonium, NH4+, which is the exact form of nitrogen the grass roots pull up and use to build amino acids and chlorophyll. Same nitrogen you're paying for in a 40-pound bag. Second ingredient, Epsom salt, magnesium sulfate, laundry aisle, or the pharmacy aisle, or the gardening aisle. Doesn't matter, it's the same compound. A 4-pound carton is about $5. Epsom salt does 2 things for the lawn. The magnesium is the central atom of every chlorophyll molecule. Literally, the green in your grass is built around a magnesium atom. And the sulfur drives protein synthesis, which is what gives the blade its rigidity. That's the standing up part. That's why the test square in my backyard wasn't just darker. It was holding its blade up while the rest of the lawn was laying over a little. Third ingredient, plain blue dish soap. Tablespoons worth. Most homeowners get this wrong, and I'll explain why in a minute, but for now, plain, unscented, no antibacterial, no degreaser additive, just the basic blue stuff. It costs you pennies per application. Its job is to break the surface tension on the waxy cuticle of the grass blade, so the ammonia and the magnesium can actually absorb into the leaf instead of beating off and rolling onto the soil. Here's the mix: 1 cup of household ammonia, 1 cup of Epsom salt, 1 tablespoon of dish soap. Dilute that into a backpack sprayer with a gallon of water, and that covers 1,000 square feet. Or, if you've got a hose end sprayer, dump the same concentrate into the reservoir and set the dial for 2,500 square feet. Either one works. Here's the math. Roughly 30 cents of ammonia, roughly 40 cents of Epsom salt, pennies of dish soap, under $1 per application, covering 2,500 square feet. And that's the kind of math that doesn't make it into the 4-step program on the shelf at the big box store. They didn't suppress the chemistry. They suppressed the recipe. Now, why does it work this fast? Because the chemistry is fast. When you spray ammonia onto a moist lawn at dusk, 2 things happen at once. A portion of that ammonia is absorbed directly through the leaf. That's why the surfactant matters. And the rest hits the soil and hydrolyzes. Within 24 to 48 hours, that ammonia has converted to ammonium, NH4+, which is the plant-available form of nitrogen. The roots pull it up immediately. The grass uses it to manufacture amino acids, and from there proteins, and from there new chlorophyll. That's your green up. That's what you start to see on day 3 or 4. The magnesium from the Epsom salt is a slower beat, but only slightly. Magnesium is what we call a mobile nutrient inside the plant. It moves around. The grass takes it up at the root, ships it through the vascular tissue, and incorporates it into chlorophyll molecules. The full chlorophyll turnover cycle in actively growing turf is about 10 to 14 days. That's why the test square didn't just look greener, it looked darker. The magnesium was building deeper pigmented chlorophyll, not just more of it. And the sulfur, the second half of magnesium sulfate, drives protein synthesis. Sulfur is in 2 of the 20 amino acids. Without it, the grass can't build the structural proteins that hold the blade upright. That's the rigidity. That's the standing up straighter part of the result. So when you put it all together, fast nitrogen via ammonium hydrolysis, mid-speed magnesium uptake building dark chlorophyll, sulfur driving protein synthesis for rigidity, you get exactly what I described from the test square. Visibly thicker, darker, standing up straighter. 14 days. That's not magic. That's not folklore. That's the chlorophyll turnover cycle in active turf, on a stopwatch. And here's the thing, and this is the beat I want you to sit with for a second. The reason the industry can't kill this technique is that the chemistry is the chemistry. They can't patent ammonia. They can't patent magnesium sulfate. They can package it, color it blue, put a label on it, mark it up 4,000%, but they cannot patent the underlying atoms. Which means the recipe doesn't expire, and it doesn't get pulled off the shelf. It just gets quietly buried under marketing. All right. Timing. This is where most homemade tonic videos fall apart because they tell you to spray it whenever and hope for the best. That's wrong. Timing is the whole game. First application of the year goes down when your soil temperature hits 60 degrees at a 4-inch depth. Not air temperature. Soil temperature. I keep a soil temperature probe and a magnetic notebook on the side of my garage, and every spring I check soil temp at 4 inches before I do anything. In DFW, that's typically mid-March. If you're in a cool season zone, Iowa, Ohio, upstate New York, it's going to be later. Could be late April. Could be early May. Doesn't matter what the calendar says. 60 degrees at 4 inches. That's the trigger. From there, you reapply every 14 days during active growth. The 14-day cycle matches the chlorophyll turnover rate, so you're feeding the lawn at the exact cadence at which it's processing what you put down. Any faster than that and you're wasting product. Any slower and you're letting the green up coast back down. Now, here's the hard cutoff. Stop applications when daytime temperatures consistently exceed 90 degrees. In DFW, that's usually mid to late June. The reason is simple. Ammonia volatilizes off the leaf in heat. Instead of feeding the lawn, you're feeding the atmosphere, and you're risking leaf burn on top of it. Wait until temperatures drop back into the 80s in late September. Then you can resume. And that's also when the fall ingredient I mentioned at the start comes in, which I'll get to. Time of day matters too. Always at dusk, or before 9 in the morning. Never in direct sun. Ammonia in direct sun on a hot blade is a recipe for burning the lawn. Same way I burned that first Texas lawn back in '93. You don't need to learn that lesson the way I did. Dusk is best because it gives the lawn a full overnight window to absorb the foliar portion before the sun comes back up. Water it in within 30 minutes of application. A light watering, not a deep soak, just enough to move the ammonia off the blade and into the top inch of soil where it can hydrolyze. 5 minutes of sprinklers does it. If rain is forecast within the hour, you can skip the water in step. Don't water it in heavy. You'll leach the nitrogen below the root zone. And, this is important, never apply on grass that's already dormant or heat-stressed. If your lawn is browning out in July, the answer is not more nitrogen. The answer is water and shade and patience until temperatures break. Applying this mix to stressed turf will make it worse, not better. One more piece of timing. And this is a safety beat I need to lock in. When you're mixing ammonia, gloves, goggles, and a half-face respirator with organic vapor cartridges. Same PPE I wear for every chemical application on this channel. Ammonia is not bleach compatible. Do not ever mix this with anything chlorinated. That produces chloramine gas, and it'll send you to the emergency room. Mix it in a well-ventilated spot. Outdoors is best, and rinse the sprayer before storing. Read the label. Always read the label. This kind of timing detail, soil temperature triggers, 14-day cadence, dusk applications, 90-degree cutoff, is exactly what doesn't fit on the back of a bag. A bag has to give you one set of instructions that works for the whole country. The recipe gives you instructions that work for your lawn. Now, Layer 4. The piece even most people who know about this mix get wrong. The dish soap. Most homemade fertilizer videos on the internet tell you to use dish soap and stop there. They don't tell you which soap, they don't tell you how much, and they don't tell you what happens when you get it wrong. Here's what I figured out the same way I figured out the vinegar concentrations. By testing it on real lawns and watching the result. Plain, unscented, blue dish soap. 1 tablespoon per gallon. That is the sweet spot. Not 2 tablespoons. Not a quarter cup like some folks online will tell you. 1 tablespoon. Why does this matter? 2 reasons. First, too much surfactant, and you strip the cuticle wax so aggressively that you burn the leaf yourself. The product isn't burning it. The soap is. I've seen homeowners follow a recipe that called for a half cup of dish soap in a gallon, and they ended up with yellow streaks across the lawn that took 6 weeks to recover. Second, scented and antibacterial soaps. Don't use them. The fragrance compounds and antibacterial agents, triclosan in older formulations, kill the soil biology that this mix is supposed to be supporting underneath. You're feeding the grass and poisoning the microbes in the same pass. I tested this on lawn number 847's property. That's the crabgrass invasion lawn that taught me the 30-day protocol, and ran 3 concentrations side by side. Half a tablespoon, 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons per gallon. The half tablespoon plot didn't show meaningfully better uptake than no soap at all. The 2 tablespoon plot showed mild leaf scorch within 3 days. The 1 tablespoon plot performed the way the chemistry said it should. 1 tablespoon. Plain. Unscented. Blue. And those 47 best of the month signs stacked in my garage. Most of them were earned on lawns that ran some version of this mix at some point in the season. Not all the time, not as the only program, but this mix, dialed in at this dish soap concentration, has been on more of my winning lawns than any bagged product ever was. That's the kind of detail that gets buried, not because anyone sat in a boardroom and decided to bury it, but because it doesn't sell anything. There's no shelf space for 1 tablespoon of plain blue dish soap. There's no marketing budget behind it, so it just quietly disappears under the noise of the 4-step program. Now, before we keep going, I want to tell you about something. Everything I just walked you through, the chemistry, the ratio, the reason the bag isn't doing anything magic, that's one piece of a bigger system I laid out in a book called Larry's 30-Day Weed Kill Protocol. 88 pages. $17. Chapter 1 is called Why Everything You Know About Weeds is Wrong, and it makes the exact same paradigm shift this video just made about fertilizer. That the problem was never the weed, it was the soil and the system around it. If you're tired of the cycle and you want a permanent fix, not another tip. The URL is larrysgardenbooks.com. If you're watching on your TV, grab your phone and point it at the QR code on screen. Take your time. I'll be right here. Phone or laptop, folks. The link's in the description. All right, back to the lawn. Because there's a reason the industry doesn't want you to see this protocol. Here's the math, and I want you to sit with it for a second. The bagged lawn fertilizer category in the United States is roughly a $3 billion a year business. The estimated gross margin on a bag of Scott's Turf Builder runs somewhere between 60 and 70%. That margin collapses the second a homeowner figures out the active ingredients cost pennies. So let's do the comparison straight. A 40-pound bag of synthetic fertilizer covering 5,000 square feet retails around $45. The equivalent nitrogen and magnesium delivered by household ammonia and Epsom salt over the same 5,000 square feet runs about $1.10 per application. Same nitrogen, same magnesium. Roughly a 4,000% markup on identical active compounds. Now, I want to be straight with you, because this isn't a one-sided story. Bagged fertilizer has real benefits. The NPK is pre-blended. The slow-release coatings meter the nitrogen out over weeks instead of days. And on certain lawns, newly sodded, high-traffic commercial properties, I still reach for a bag. I'm not anti-fertilizer. I'm against the idea that the chemistry in the bag is somehow exotic or proprietary when it came out of the same Haber-Bosch ammonia plant your pantry bottle came from. That's the part that bothers me. Connect this back to your situation. If you're spending $400 a year on a fertilizer program, over 25 years of owning your home, that's $10,000 transferred to the industry for chemistry that costs them pennies to produce and costs you pennies to mix. $10,000 per lawn. That number is what nobody wants to put on the back of the bag. They didn't hide the chemistry. They just hid the math. All right. Stay with me because this is the one I promised you at the top. The fall-only ingredient that turns a green lawn into a thick one. It's blackstrap molasses, unsulfured. Half a cup added to the base mix per gallon. You apply it twice. In DFW, that's early October and again mid-November, both about 4 to 6 weeks ahead of the first hard frost. If you're up in a cool season zone, shift it earlier, mid-September and late October. Here's why this works and why it only works in fall. The complex sugars in blackstrap molasses don't feed the grass directly. They feed the soil microbial community, the bacteria and the mycorrhizal fungi living in the root zone. And they feed them at the exact moment when your turfgrass biology is pivoting away from leaf growth and into root mass, crown reserves, and lateral tillering. That microbe bloom mineralizes bound potassium and trace minerals right at the root zone. The grass takes them up, stores them as carbohydrate reserves in the crown over winter, and then spends them on tiller production the following spring. Tillers are what make a lawn thick. Not green. Thick. Now here's why you do not do this in summer. In warm soil, those same sugars feed weed seedlings and surface-level fungal pathogens. You'd be subsidizing the enemy. In cooling fall soil, the microbial population shifts toward the beneficial fungi that partner with grass roots, and the sugar lands where you want it. This is the kind of seasonal timing detail that doesn't sell bagged product. You can't put feed your microbes for next spring's tiller count on a shelf next to a 4-step program. So it just doesn't exist in the conversation. Before I let you go, if today made you realize you've been buying chemistry that was sitting in your pantry the whole time, the rest of the system works the same way. A thick lawn is a fortress. That's a phrase I use a lot, and it's not poetry. It's the actual philosophy in Chapter 5 of Larry's 30-day weed kill protocol, the Phase 2 barrier system chapter, where I lay out how a properly fed thick stand of turf functions as a living mulch that crowds weeds out before you ever have to spray anything. The kitchen mix in this video is the cheapest possible way to build that thickness. The book, again, is $17. The URL is larrysgardenbooks.com. TV viewers, the QR code is on screen now. Go ahead and aim your phone at it. No rush, I'll give you a second to get it lined up. Phone or laptop folks, the link's in the description. A permanent fix, not another tip. Chemistry doesn't expire. All right, here's the takeaway. A cup of household ammonia, a cup of Epsom salt, a tablespoon of plain unscented blue dish soap per gallon of water, every 14 days from the day your 4-inch soil temperature hits 60, applied at dusk or before 9 in the morning. Watered in within 30 minutes, and then a half cup of unsulfured blackstrap molasses added to that same mix twice in fall. That's the protocol. That's the whole thing. Now you know the chemistry, and chemistry doesn't expire. That's yours for life. Next video on the channel, I'm walking through the homemade pre-emergent built on Dr. Nick Christian's corn gluten research out of Iowa State. How to stop crabgrass next spring without buying a bag of proteamine. Same idea. Same lens. Different chemistry. Go check your lawn this weekend. You'll see what I mean. I'll see you in the next one.